Tori the Crafty Girl here, and today I'm going to show you how to create my Summer Breeze Bralette pattern for the circular knitting machine. Today's video is going to be a high-level overview on how I created the pattern, but if you want to support the channel or you want a little bit more in-depth hands-on detail, you can head to the link down below in the description and support the channel by purchasing the pattern over on Etsy. As an added bonus, you'll actually get a very in-depth detailed video tutorial that is exclusive only to purchasers of the pattern, which will walk you through how to read the pattern as well as how to actually do the increases on a more detailed level. Now, I know not everyone can afford to purchase a pattern, or maybe you don't even need a pattern, and I totally get that. But if you can, every little bit makes a huge difference, and it gives me the ability to create more and more patterns like this for you because I have the resources and time available to do so. So thank you so much in advance if you do purchase the pattern. And there are so many ways that you can customize this Summer Breeze bralette top right here. I will say some people will wear it as is, and I love that for you. I'm more of a modest person, so for me, this is something that I would maybe wear under a mesh, crochet top or something like that. But stay tuned, there will be some additional videos coming on ways that you can actually customize this to make it maybe have a little more coverage, be a little bit more modest. There's just so many ways that you can customize it. But first, you need to learn how to make the actual bralette. So without further ado, let's dive in to the tutorial. For our project today, you will need your circular knitting machine. I am using the Addy King size, so it has 46 pins, but you can actually use any circular knitting machine that you have the ability to at least access 20 pins on panel setting. So this is going to be a panel project, but no fear, no worries. I know you hear the word panel, especially if you're just starting out and you're like, oh my gosh, that's so complicated. It really isn't. In fact, in the description, I'm going to list a few videos that might help you out. I have one on how to create those perfect panels, lots of tips and tricks for you. Also, in the pattern itself, there is a resources page that has a link to videos as well to help you with different tips and tricks for increasing and panels and all the things like that, just to keep it all in one place. So this is not a complicated project. It actually goes very quickly. So circular knitting machine with 20 pins that you can use on panel setting. We will also need our standard supplies. So we will need our scissors. You'll need your crochet hook for this project, a darning needle just to hide your tails. A couple extra things. You will need waste yarn. We are going to use waste yarn just to cast off of each of the bralette cups. And I would recommend having a counter of some kind. If you can get your machine to count the rows back and forth for you, that's great. But this project is very detailed in the amount of increases and when you do the increases. Again, I'm not going to go into all of that detail in this video. I'm going to show you how it was done. But if you want the exact measurements or exact increases, that's where that pattern is going to come into play. Optionally, you can get some of these bra pads to use for your little bra tops, your bralette, because, it's yarn. And yarn, when it gets exposed to the elements, it can stretch out and it can be a little revealing. So I would definitely recommend getting some bra pads, or if you just have like latex fabric or any sort of lining fabric that you can use that as well. But those are just optional, just something else you can include for this project. The yarn that I am going to use, and I really do recommend using a cotton yarn, especially when you're working with clothing items and in the warmer months. In the colder months, right, wool is a great yarn to use because it keeps you nice and snuggly. But in the summer, you don't want wool. You don't want it on your skin. I don't. So we're going to use cotton. Now, with that said, I totally understand cotton does not work in the Centro machines, or at least not for me. I have tried it. So if you can't use the cotton, you can also use an acrylic. In fact, the sample that I showed you at the beginning was made with Lion Brand Pound of Love, just acrylic yarn, and it works just fine. But we're going to go with our lovely Casey. This is the first time I'm working with this color combo, and the color is called Lake. So let's see how it works out. I'm actually pretty excited. It's lots of blues, but I think there's some random orange in here. So we'll see how this works. And we're going to create 2 bralette cups, and then we will connect them together. All right, so for the bralettes, we are going to put this, again, you can put it on panel or to mode, whatever works best for you, because we're only going to be using 20 of the pins. So you just want to figure out which 20, that's what I'm using for this. But of course, you can always increase that depending on what your needs are. And you're going to cast on, and you want to leave a pretty long tail. So one of the things that makes this project so quick and simple is that if you don't want to crochet like the neck strap, you don't have to. You can leave the tail really long here when you cast on, since we're not using waste yarn, and this becomes your neck strap. So if you are one of those people that don't really care for crocheting, or you just want a really simple, quick project where you don't have to crochet the neck strap, this is the way to do that. Now, the band strap that's going to go around your body, you will, I do recommend using crochet for that, but you also could just use, tie on a piece of yarn, whatever works best. But I am going to leave a pretty long tail just so I can show you what that looks like. And then we are going to cast on to our pins. Now for this bralette top, to get the triangle shape, you are going to do increases. As I said, if you're not familiar with increasing on your machine, I will have a link below to a video that'll give you an overview of how to do that. I find increasing super simple, decreasing not my favorite. So I did create this pattern with that in mind, trying to make it as simple as possible, even if you're just starting out. So we are going to cast on to 2 pins. So we're going to start with 2. That'll give us that nice pointed shape at the top. And to do that, again, just locate whichever pin you want to go under. This is just where it's going to hold your yarn. And then we're going to go around and then in front of 2 pins. So these are our 2 pins that we're going to go around and in front of. And then we are going to pop it in the yarn guide. Now, I do want you to pay attention right here to my finger. We do need to make sure that this goes under the bumper here. Okay, so we want that piece of yarn under this bumper. And now we're ready to continue. We're also going to pop that down. So these are the 2 that we're going to do. Like I said, there is a pattern to tell you how many increases you are going to do, but I will show you right here at the beginning what that process looks like. So I am going to start with 4 rows of 2 pins. Okay. And then this is where your row counter, if you have one of these, can come in handy, so you can keep track, because you want both of your bralette cups to be exactly the same size. If you're off even 1 row, it'll definitely be noticeable. So definitely keep track whichever way works best for you. So I always count this as row 1. It just helps my brain. So we've already gone through row 1, and now we're going to go back and we are going to do here. Make sure that pops under there. That's row 2. And then we're going to come back, make sure it goes under this pin and doesn't get stuck. Okay, so it's under there. And we stop there. Make sure this makes it a little bit easier. These are our 2 pins we're working on, and we just did row 3. Now we're going to once again come back. Once that pops under, that is now row 4. So we just did our first 4 rows under 2 pins, and now we're going to increase. So to do that, we're just going to continue past the first 2 pins and go to the 3rd pin. So this is our 3rd pin, and that yarn just went underneath it. So that is row 5. Now, again, you're going to come back, make sure, right here, make sure this yarn goes under the pin. If this gets stuck, pop it down. And then we're also going to increase again on this side. So increase, and that is row 6. And then we're going to go back. Make sure that's under. We're going to increase again. It's row 7. We're going to increase again, and that's row 8. So that is the pattern that we're going to be doing. We're going to be increasing as we go through to get the shape that you're looking for in the cup. We are, for this pattern, going to do a total of 40 rows, and we are going to do different intervals of increasing. And this is, again, not to be
harping on the pattern that's out there, but I did do a lot of math and different iterations to get the best shape. And so you can find all of that as well as, and this is super helpful for me, a handy little checklist that you can mark off all the rows that you've already done. If you're anything like me, you might get distracted. I don't know, I get distracted by everything. So if you get distracted, you might forget which row you're on, and having a worksheet to keep track will make a huge difference. Some of you don't even need a pattern, and that's awesome. Great. I bow down, and I am so envious of that. So we're just going to continue and go through and increase at different intervals until we get to that 40 total rows. So that is our 40th row. So you can see how the shape is going to go. And now we are going to cast off with waist yarn. Now, in this case, you do not need to keep a long tail here. We are going to do a crochet finish, but we can actually just snip that here. I find it very frustrating when I have a lot of long tails because they end up getting in the way. So if I can cut them at any time, I do. Okay, let's pull that over here. All right, and then now we're just going to use waist yarn. So just a contrasting, of course I'm using a color that is not contrasting. Well, hopefully I'll be able to see it. Okay, so here is what our cup looks like. So this is cup number 1. I didn't get any orange. I'm kind of sad about that, but I do like how the stripes worked up here. So this is our first cup, and then we are going to just recreate this. We'll do a secondary cup of this, and then we'll come back and finish it. Now we take this yarn tail right here. In fact, you can take both of them if you have that there, and you just want to tighten it up. So pull it a little bit so that you don't have a gap here. You will find that depending on your tension, you may find some longer stitches. Obviously, when we are increasing, you're going to find a little bit longer stitches. But down here at the bottom, you can just kind of tug it a little and tighten it up just a little bit. Also, to make things a little bit easier, I would recommend doing a steam block at this point. So what that means, if you're not familiar with the concept, you'll see, especially with the knitting machines, they do a lot of curling, and that happens with yarn in general. No matter what, if you're a knitter or crocheter, you're probably going to see some yarn curlage. I don't know if that's the way to say it. We're going to say yarn curlage. How would you say that? Let me know. But we probably will see that. So a way to get rid of that is actually to use a little steamer. So we have a handheld steamer. Well, it's not handheld. We have a professional steamer upstairs. But what you would do is you would steam it lightly so that it would be flat, and then don't touch it. Once you get it the shape you want, don't touch it. Let it air dry. And then once it's dry, it'll retain that beautiful shape. So I would recommend that. It does make some things like finishing a little bit easier when you're not battling with the curl. But again, it's totally up to you. So we are just going to continue as is right now. And we're just going to take this little short piece of yarn, which is at the bottom loop of the inside of the bralette. And then over here on the right, we're going to pull it through the bottom loop of the other side of the bralette. And we're going to make sure to capture both of those. Now, you can lace this up if you want to do like a mattress stitch to get it as high as you want, unless you want it to be a little lower cut. Again, this is really personal preference, whichever works best for you. But you do want to go through it a few times, even if you're just going to be using the last loops here. So I'm going to go back through that loop and that loop one more time and give it a nice good tug. Just make sure it looks pretty. I'm gonna leave this one. I'm not going to actually, but I do want to get it a little tighter because you want it to be tighter. We will crochet this together as well, but it's always a good idea to have a nice tight finish here. All right, well, I caked what I could. This does make it a lot easier. And what we're gonna do to create the band strap is we're actually going to crochet here. About, for me, I do 75 chains because that is the length that I want, but you can vary this whichever works for you. You just want it to be the exact same size, or remember the number of chains you do because you're going to mirror that on the other side. Here is my band strap number 1. So I did 75 rows. Now what we're going to do is we're going to come to, again, here's our bra band. We're going to come down to the outside edge and we're going to pick up this loop right here that has the waist yarn in it. So this is the first loop right there. And then out of the way. And then we're going to pull it through and we're going to do a slip stitch into the first one. Okay, so I like to do a slip stitch there. I don't need any extra stretch on that one loop. Then we're going to find the next loop. And my problem, because I decided to use a very similar color, is I need to make sure that I'm not going to miss any of those. Okay, then we're just going to go through, pick up that loop right here. And I am going to do a single crochet, not a slip stitch down here, because we do want it to have a little bit of stretch. Okay, again, find the next one. Don't miss any. And we're going to continue this all the way across. Okay, now when you get to the center, remember you had attached those two pieces, so make sure that they are going the correct direction. You can move those pieces out like that. Big tip for you, don't use waist yarn that is similar colors to your yarn. That is a problem. All right, so we want to pick up, this loop is a knot. So this is where we knotted it together. So you don't need to pick that up, but I would like to at least get it in the yarn here. So I'm just going to single crochet through the hole that is there. Down this side, we're going to pick up this loop on the very end, and then we're going to go through. And again, pick up all those loops. This side is a lot easier. And just single crochet. Don't miss the last couple, because sometimes they can be a little hidden here. And again, on the last loop, I'm just going to do a slip stitch instead of a double crochet. Just to pull it through both like that. And guess what we're going to do? We're going to chain the exact same number that we chained over here for our band strap. So I'm going to do 75. Okay, so we'll snip our yarn, pull it, tie it off. And now we are going to remove that waist yarn. This is the true test. I always do this slowly, because if I miss any loops, you can still pick them up at this point, because sometimes I do. I always say pay attention, but you know how we get. You know how I get. Very important too, on the ends is where you really want to pay attention and make sure you didn't miss any loops. Okay, so let's just double check this. Is anything coming out? Nope, that looks good. That looks good. Everything's good so far. All right, let's take out this next bit of waist yarn. Did not miss any. Wonderful. All right, so our last little step here, unless you're adding straps to the top, is we now need to make sure that we have hidden all of our loose threads. Okay, there's yarn tails everywhere. Move, yarn tails, move. All right, now you can go steam it if you want to do that, but let's go ahead and put it on the mannequin and show you what it looks like. All right, so let me show you a couple of variations. So this side, let me take that out. This side, I actually did a crochet strap. So I just crocheted onto the end to give it a little bit of thickness. But then this side, just to show you what that looks like, this is just the yarn tail that if you had two long tails, you could actually do that, which makes it even simpler. Also, to point out, I have a couple of bra pads just sitting in here to show you what happens. I have not pressed this, but you could stitch those right inside, and then that way they are not sheer. I would recommend getting something that matches the color. This light pink is kind of a nude, so this doesn't really show through, but it gives you coverage no matter if it stretches, which it will. And someone had asked a question, does it lose its shape when it gets wet? Of course it does. If you've ever had any clothing that is made out of even just cotton in general, if it gets wet, it kind of stretches out. So anyway, this is the finished Summer Breeze Bralette. All of your support makes it possible for me to create more patterns like this and share them with all of you. So thank you so much, everybody. Until next time, see ya!